Hello, and welcome to the Amongst Romans podcast, your window to everything Italy from an outsider's perspective. Join us each week as we navigate the Italian way of life and all the adventures that come along with it.
Last week, my allergies were completely out of control. Since Alex was still traveling and I couldn't talk, this episode didn't happen when it was supposed to. But you know what? I'm not going to beat myself over it, and you're getting it this week. So I hope you enjoy it. When we decided to cover the different places in Italy on this podcast, we started off with the most popular ones. So we're talking about Rome, Venice, and Florence. I wanted to cover those places because A, I love these cities, and I think you should definitely visit them at least once. But I also want to introduce you to the less visited areas of Italy and tell you about the other places you might have never heard of, because I think there's so much to see here in Italy that gets overlooked, and most people don't even go to those places. So the city we're talking about today is Matera, and I think Matera is one of those places that is sort of known, but in a way, not really. Matera isn't necessarily a hidden gem or one that really gets tourists, because it does. It was featured in the latest James Bond movie. If you've seen the commercials or if you've seen the movie No Time to Die, it's been popping up on the radar of tourists coming to Italy, but I think it's still not that well known. We've been there a couple of times now, and there were always tourists, like I've said many times before. I don't think there is such a thing as off-season here in Italy anymore, and Matera is just an example of that. So what makes Matera such a fascinating place to explore? Matera is another place in Italy that predates the Romans, like by a lot of years. From what I could find, Matera has been inhabited as far as the Paleolithic era. That's about 9,000 years ago, which is pretty spectacular when you think about it. Here you'll find a network of cave dwellings. They're carved into the limestone cliff. And people have lived here for like millennia, really, even as late as the 1950s. These cave dwellings are known as the Sassi. They were not just created as a temporary shelter. The Sassi people who carved these homes and even churches into the rock, they created a unique cave dwelling community. In case you're wondering where the name Sassi comes from, Sassi is the Italian word for stones. So the Sassi people or Sassi dwellers is a term that just describes the people who lived in the cave dwellings. In English, you would call them, I guess, cave dwellers. Honestly, before I even went to Matera, I saw the pictures of it and I thought, okay, it looks fine. I wasn't really that moved by it, but once I got there, that's when things really changed for me. I think Matera is simply incredible. And it's one of those places that pictures just don't do justice. At least that's how it was for me. When you see Matera today, it's kind of hard to believe that it was once called the shame of Italy. As you can imagine, living in caves wasn't that glamorous. The living conditions were pretty basic, as the caves lacked proper sanitation, running water, and electricity. This poverty, not surprisingly, became a national concern. In the 1950s, there was a writer named Carlo Levi, and he brought attention to the situation in Matera when he wrote a book called Christ Stopped at Eboli. I haven't read the book, but I guess it was powerful enough that the government had to do something about it. The descriptions of the squalor in Matera really exposed the harsh realities faced by the people here, and the government recognized the need for the change, and they initiated a program to relocate the residents from the Sassi into modern housing. As you can imagine, this improved the living standards, but also disrupted their traditional way of life. So Matera's reputation as the shame of Italy gradually faded as the city modernized. So the Sassi themselves underwent restoration and became a source of cultural pride, really. Today, Matera has transformed into a thriving town, and it's celebrating its unique heritage. It's no longer a shame. In 1993, the Sassi were designated as the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and Matera was even named the European Capital of Culture in 2019. So as you can see, a lot of things can change when you do some revitalization. And I don't know about you, but I do love a good underdog story. So why visit Matera? There are three main reasons I think Matera is a great place to visit. And one, it has a unique landscape that you won't find anywhere else. Two, it's very old. And if you're like me and the idea of stepping back in time and walking, the same paths as people have for so many centuries appeals to you, then this is a very cool experience. And 3, it just looks awesome, especially at sunset. Matera is really interesting because you don't see any trees or grass, and it's pretty much stone. But you do see flower pots and cacti and potted plants, and that adds a bit of an interest and liveliness to the rock city. Plus, at sunset, you get like a really nice orangey glow. It's really quite beautiful. It's also quite nice at night when they have the lights, everything's lit up, and it's really quite picturesque. Now, if you've seen the James Bond movie or even just the trailer for it, you have seen Matera. So there's a scene in the movie when he's on this stone bridge and these bad guys show up and they chase him. So he just kind of jumps off the bridge, and it's supposed to be in Matera. Well, the bridge itself is not in Matera. It's actually in another town called Gravina in Puglia. So they were able to film the scenes at 2 different places and just put it together to make it look like it's a one town, which it really isn't. Now, if you want to add a theme to your Italian adventure and, James Bond or cities that are made of stone, it's up to you. But I would recommend visiting both Matera and Gravina in Puglia, as they are about half an hour from each other and both are really quite spectacular. We actually did that last year for my birthday. We stayed in Gravina in Puglia, so we got to see both cities and that famous bridge. And Gravina in Puglia is in Puglia, and Matera is in the Basilicata region. So you can also check both regions out as you are, going from one place to the other. Okay, so now let's talk about what you can actually do in Matera. Matera kind of reminds me of Herculaneum in that there are 2 parts of the city. So you have the ancient Sassi where you can just wander around and explore. And the second part is the modern day city, just like in Herculaneum. So the modern city sits around the Sassi and overlooks the ancient part. Think of it like a stadium. The Sassi are the sitting area and the arena, while the modern day is like the nosebleeds on the very top where you can just walk around. I don't think too many people live in those homes now, and they don't really look like you would imagine. They have doors and windows with steps and landings, and in some cases, even small terraces. So there are 2 parts of the Sassi. One is called Sassi Barisano, and the other one is called Sassi Cavoso. So the Barisano part has been updated, and here's where you'll find those boutique hotels, art spaces, restaurants, and so on. And Sassi Cavioso is the part where it's sort of more rustic, and it will give you an idea of what living here used to look like. Now, I would say for safety reasons, I would advise you to venture into any dwellings that are not clearly open to visitors, just simply because you can get hurt and it might be hard to even get you out. So I would say don't do it. Once you get to the base of the Sassi, there's a gorge and you can't miss it. There's a road that goes along the cliff or that overlooks it. And there are different entrances, so you can actually go through the entrance and go down the steps. And you then just kind of get to the bottom of the gorge. There's a river, you cross, and you can go to the other side. So we opted to drive to the viewpoint that's across from Matera. I believe that one is called Belvedere di Mugiatimone. I will leave the link for it in the show notes. And you can totally find it on Google Maps. So we parked there and we made our way towards the edge. There was about maybe 10-minute walk from the parking lot, and it was just like an empty field where you could just leave your car. And we made our way down to sort of the edge across from Matera. I would say it's almost like a canyon, right? Like it's a gorge canyon, whatever you call it. And on this side, you'll also find some old caves. And these are about maybe 7,000 years old, give or take. And obviously, these ones haven't been fixed up. So it will give you an idea of what it was like. And, you can envision yourself living in one of them, I guess, if you really want to. I can say that cave dwellings is definitely one I am happy to pass on. It's not my thing, but I do admire the creativity and effort it took to live there. I mean, I guess you have to do what you have to do to survive. And when you think of it from that perspective, it's quite impressive that these people have managed to live there for that long and actually survive. We did the hike across to Matera and then back. The hike itself took about 20 minutes each way. The road is quite rocky and uneven, so you definitely need proper footwear or you might get hurt and you don't want to slip and twist your ankle in this area. The side across from Matera, so the one we started on, is a bit more rugged, but it follows a path, so it's a bit easier to follow because it's quite clear where to go. The side on the Matera side is a bit more steep, And we actually saw people going down with heels on, which I definitely thought was a choice. But I have a feeling they didn't go all the way across and back, especially no indoor shoes, because I don't think they would have done that. At the bottom of the gorge is a river, so you have to cross a bridge. It's not actually too scary, but it's narrow. So if there are a lot of people trying to cross, you might have to wait for them to cross before you're able to get on it yourself. If they stop to take pictures, which many people do, then you'll have to wait as well. Again, if you want to take a picture with no one there, then you have to wait till everybody passes and so on. There are even several spots along the way that when we came, they were not open, but, depends on what time of year you are in. There's a couple of old churches with frescoes inside that you can visit. Like I said, we weren't able to because they were not open, but there are also tours that you can take that will take you to those old, cave churches and you can see the frescoes. So if that's something that appeals to you, I also recommend doing that. The hike is quite nice because the views are really spectacular. If you choose to go from Matera side or from the other side first and then back, it's a good idea because you get to see Matera from both sides. So we went during the day. We got like a pure daylight, blue skies. It was beautiful. If you decide to go sort of at sunset or towards like the dusk, you can. The trail is open, but just it's not lit. So it would be dangerous to kind of cross. And if you cross from Matera to the other side, you might get stuck there, and then not be able to come back, or you'll be doing it in the dark, which again could be dangerous. So just keep that in mind. So the newer part of Matera is, pretty much modern city. They have the same typical attractions you'll find everywhere else. There are museums, bars, restaurants, shops. There's even like outdoor sculptures, which are quite nice to kind of like wander around and see. If you stay in Matera, you have plenty to explore in the Sansia as well as the modern town, like I said. Both are quite nice. They offer different things. And again, the Sansia are fantastic, but, would you be able to get everything you want there? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what you're looking for in the experience. Now, when we talk about food, Matera is not a place I would say to go for like pizza. It's not a place I would say to go for like pasta dishes. They do have some of their own, but again, I encourage you to try local food. So this area is known for a certain type of bread made from what they call hard wheat. And it's made a certain way and there is a process to it. You won't experience this type of bread in a different part of Italy. So I recommend you try it while you're there. The dishes you'll find here are inspired by the people who lived here. There wasn't a lot of choice in the past, so they had to get creative. You'll get orecchiette, which is a pasta that comes from Puglia, and it's sort of, to describe, it's almost like a flat disc. It's called the ear. It's like a flat little disc with like some texture to it, and it comes with turnip tops and some breadcrumbs on it, and maybe anchovy. It's also quite nice. There's also another dish called the cardoncelli, which is like a soup made from thistle. So if you're there in colder weather, that's also nice to try. One of my favorite dishes that I had in Matera was this fava bean puree, and it's topped with agretti and sprinkled with breadcrumbs. So what is agretti? Agretti is more of an herb, not a vegetable. It looks like a bunch of long, dark green stems, and you can get them steamed, or you can even like fry them up with some anchovies and olive oil. I would say the taste is sort of comparable to maybe like asparagus, or if you've ever had like fiddleheads. It's got sort of that taste to it, kind of very similar. So anyway, this dish has fava bean puree, and the agretti is steamed and fried a little bit, and it's put on top, and then just sprinkled a bit with breadcrumbs. So this has been one of my favorite dishes, and we've actually managed to recreate it at home. You can buy agretti in a store here. I think it's quite seasonal. But we have it in the grocery stores here. So whenever we can, we do buy it and we make it. I'll leave a picture for you in the show notes because I don't think I'm describing it the best way, just to give you an idea of what this actually looks like. And if you can get it, it's actually quite nice. I do recommend it. I've seen agretti in other places in Italy, but I've only seen it on the menu in Matera. Not to say that other places don't have it, but that's the only one I've noticed. So if you are in Matera and you come across this, I really do recommend it. All right, so now let's talk about the best time to visit. If you've listened to any of the previous episodes, you know that I would say January to March or even October, November would be my picks for visiting Matera. Summers can get very hot and there isn't a lot of shade. Think of it, it's a rock city with there are no trees, there's no shade. So if you want to do the hike across, you're going to be burning in the sun. I would totally not recommend doing it then, just because it gets really hot, and especially with the rocks absorbing the heat. I would say it's pretty gross. The first time we went to Matera was in late September. The second time we went was at the beginning of January. So literally like the first week of January, we were in Matera. We stayed in Gravina in Puglia the second time, and we drove to Matera the 2-3 days that we were there. And like I said, winter in Italy, especially down south, is not the same as the winter we get in Canada. When we were there, it was sunny and relatively warm. And from what I remember, I think it was maybe about 10 degrees, give or take. So again, with the sunny, it's a sunny day, it's about 10 degrees. It was actually quite nice. And if you hike across, you get warmed up. So really, it was perfect time to visit. Again, the hike was very pleasant. There weren't too many people. It took about 20 minutes to get across. That included us stopping, taking pictures, waiting for the people to pass. There were tourists, like of course there would be, but the place wasn't completely packed. So when you see pictures of places in Italy that are just filled with people, this was not Matera. I mean, I can't speak about summer because we haven't been there in the summertime, but again, I don't think it's as widely visited as other places in Italy, which will give you an idea of how popular it is versus, let's say, Rome or Florence or Venice. They also have a Christmas market in the new part of Matera, just outside of where the Sassi is. So when we were there, they still had the stalls open. I think most Christmas markets in Europe stay open till January 6 or 7, I think. So again, we got to check out the Sassi, and then in the evening when we were finished, we went to check out the market. We got to check out the booths. They had some, foods you can try. They had some knickknacks you can buy. It was quite nice. They had the lights, street lights, and everything else was lit up, which was actually quite nice. So again, if you're into the Christmas season, you can also come in December and you can check out how Matera looks like with all the festive lighting, and check out the Christmas market as well. So how to get to Matera? Matera isn't serviced by a major airport, so getting there may or may not be difficult, depends on how you look at it. You can fly into Bari. Bari is in Puglia, and it's the closest airport to Matera. It's about 55 kilometers. And from Bari Airport, you can take a train or a bus, or you can also rent a car and drive to Matera. You can also take a train. Matera has a train station connected to the regional train network. So you can take a train again from Bari, or you can take it from any other big city if you are in Rome or any other place, and just take a train down to Matera. The train might not be the fastest depending on where you're coming from, but again, you don't have to drive and it just gets you there. There are several bus companies that connect Matera from the surrounding towns. I've never taken the bus there, so I'm not quite sure how that would work, but especially in this tourist season, you probably have more options. It can be more budget friendly, although you probably take longer for you to get there. As I mentioned, we drove. So, for us, driving around Italy is pretty common. If you want to drive, you can rent a car. And that's probably your best way to explore Matera, especially if you want to drive to Gravina and Puglia and check that out as well. The drive from Bari takes about an hour on regional roads. Again, depends on the traffic. But keep in mind that you can't really park in the historic center of Matera. There are parking spaces and areas where you can park in the newer part of the city. There's even parking garages when you can park there and just walk over. If you really don't care how to get there and you don't want to think about it, I recommend doing a tour, especially if you're staying in Bari. There will be guided tours that will take you there. So again, you don't have to do it yourself, but I think those will be more of a day trip. So if you want to enjoy Matera in the evening or early in the morning, you might consider just staying in Matera. Like I said, Matera is a very unique place. It's unlike any other place in Italy. There are so many great places to see that Matera, I think, has not been as much on people's radar, or at least not the people from North America like us. I don't necessarily think Matera looks the best in pictures. That's my personal opinion, unless you see really good pictures of Matera. However, if you look at pictures of, let's say, Matera versus other places in Italy, you might think, oh, this place looks much even more interesting than Matera would be, so I'm going to go there instead. That was kind of how I felt the first time we were going. We almost didn't go because I thought, well, I don't know, do we really want to stop there? It just doesn't sound that interesting. But I'm really glad we did, because when you see it, it's visually appealing. It's a very picturesque place, and it's really cool. Like you feel like you're in like a totally different part of Italy. It's very different from Rome. It's very different from Venice. It's very different from Florence. So it's also an opportunity to just see a different side of the country that most people don't really think of when they think of Italy. And that to me makes it so interesting. The food, again, is very good, but it's a bit different than what you have in mind. I'm sure if you really want to get a pizza, you can find a place, but I'm just saying it probably won't be the best pizza. I mean, we live in Campania, so for us, pizza here is the best, but you get my point. There are different things to experience in Matera that might be a bit of a different side of Italy than what you're expecting or what most people see. So I definitely think Matera should be on your list because it's a great city and it really is an amazing experience to come and see it. If you want to stay inside the Sassi, you can go and stay at one of those renovated Sassi cave dwellings, which look really cool. Or you can stay outside in the newer part and just walk over and see that. Or you can also stay outside like we did in Gravina and Puglia, which is also a very cool town and has like that kind of a gorge setting, but they have a bridge there instead of going across and up and down. You actually have a bridge. That's the one James Bond was walking on. So again, it's a very spectacular looking town and it's really great to see both of them. So anyway, with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope you consider adding Matera to your next Italian itinerary. And I really hope you'll enjoy exploring Matera as much as we did and discovering its hidden treasures. So remember, keep that in mind on your next trip to Italy, and I'll catch you in the next one.
And this brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review on whatever you're listening right now. We'll be back next week, so stay tuned.